If you enjoyed Resident Evil 7 but felt that it didn't have enough Brothers Grimm shit, then Resident Evil Village may very well be the perfect game to stuff down your greedy little horror hole. First and foremost, Resident Evil Village is more. Very much just more Resident Evil, and I don't mean that as an insult, I mean that as, well, as a compliment, because Resident Evil is a very good series, of course, and the recent games in the past few years have been excellent. I've mentioned many times how I feel Capcom has been on a heck of a roll lately, and Resident Evil Village is just the latest success in quite an impressive line of them. Resident Evil Village follows from Resident Evil 7 and as such has a first-person perspective very much like that previous game and unlike the third-person Resident Evil remake games, by the way. And by the way, I'm very pleased that we've got these different types of Resident Evil experiences. We've got those third-person real, like, more serious horror-themed ones. We've got these still horrifying, but not quite scary as much camp schlocky horror with these first-person games. And speaking of camp schlocky horror, that is where Resident Evil Village shines. Some people have said that this isn't a particularly scary game, and on some level that's true. It is, however, an incredibly spoopy game. Set in the country of Europe, it's always just Europe. The titular village is the kind of thing you'd expect to see in The Nightmare Before Christmas, only with a lot more decapitated goat heads hanging from trees. The game draws from classic horror themes. Now we're dealing with lichens and vampires and ghosts and Frankenstein people. Frankenstein people, ooh. And in terms of gameplay, structure, and Metal Gear Solid levels of silliness, Resident Evil Village follows in the footsteps, quite faithfully, of Resident Evil 4. As well as revolving around a village in Europe with its own massive fuck-off castle, there are many structural similarities to the incredibly popular revitalization of the Resident Evil series from the early 2000s. The way you explore and are able to backtrack to each area, the fact that you can buy and upgrade your weaponry from a merchant who also references Resident Evil 4. Even little subtle details, like the way treasure is hidden in the map with the little glimmers that you can shoot to knock them down from high places. Things like running after chickens to get them for their resources. Resident Evil Village manages to feel very much like a spiritual successor to Resident Evil 4 without coming off as a retread. Very much like RE4, Resident Evil Village is also far more action-oriented compared to Resident Evil 7. With the wider range of guns and the ability to upgrade them, you'll be doing a lot more shooting this time than last, which is fine by me. I've got no problem with combat in my horror. I will say that certain enemies are annoying to fight. I know they want to keep enemies intimidating, but there is this thin line between tense and scary and bloody annoying. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the lichens completely no-selling your offense can be a friggin' pain in the arse. Like, they'll just shrug off the bullets, then walk up and bite you in the hand, which has already had enough trauma. It doesn't need any more biting. It's Ethan Winters. He has his legs and his hands chopped off all the time. It's his one personality trait. Can't keep hold of his fucking limbs. In a way, he's like Waspinator from Beast Wars. What? Anyway, I will say that both in terms of combat and, mechanical design and visual design, the enemies in Resident Evil Village piss all over the molded from Resident Evil 7. The enemies in Resident Evil 7 had that gloopy monster look that so many video games have. I talked about that in my Returnal video as well. There are too many things that are just gloop. It's the Prey thing all over again. I'm not inspired by gloop. Give me more than the gloop. Resident Evil Village gives me more than gloop. The overall aesthetic with this, like I said earlier, this Brothers Grimm feel, it's a very Halloween-y game. Very, very spooksome. Abandoned castles and ghost houses and secret labs, just all the good classic gothic horror stuff. And then, of course, we get to our main antagonists, the four lords, of which Lady Dimitrescu is the most famous. Of course, most of the marketing is focused on Lady Dimitrescu. And I saw it mentioned that's kind of clever because it keeps so much of the rest of the game a secret. Like, everyone's talking about the big steppy vampire lady. They've got no idea of the dangerously umbilical problems that are coming their way afterwards. The main antagonists are delightful. The first scene where they're all introduced was the moment I realised Resident Evil Village and I were gonna get along famously. They're indicative of what this game is, just shamelessly over the top, camper than Christmas, and very hard to forget. Of course, as well as drawing heavily from Resident Evil 4, there are many structural similarities to the previous of the first-person games, Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. There's that big focus on exploration and puzzle solving, which mostly consists of pick up a thing and bring the thing to do the thing with the thing to unlock more things. Naturally, you'll be doing a lot of your exploring and combat and puzzle solving while being chased by fuck-off monsters. The big ones that you can't shoot to death, such as Big Steppy Vampire Lady. You know what to expect there. You basically are doing puzzles, doing a bit of exploring, and then a door opens and in walks a gigantic 10-foot-tall woman with gigantic shoes that are destined for your ass. And you're looking forward to it happening. Because Big Steppy Vampire Lady. Castle Dimitrescu, of course, is very Transylvanian in nature, very vampiric, has that sense of fleeing from decadent, unhinged nobility. The next section is one of my favourite environments in a horror game, actually, not just because of the sticky repercussions inside the haunted hell house, but because it is just this really neat little haunted house in a Resident Evil, and it's great. It's the area in the game most low on combat but high on horror. I really like it. But then I really like all of the areas and I love the characters that are there. They look amazing, they're well written, they're fantastically performed. As for the combat, it's good. It's pretty good, you know, it's not like horror game bad, or like, oh, it's a horror game, we've got to make the combat a pile of crap. It's more expanded, obviously, with the more guns and everything that's in this compared to Resident Evil 7. There's more enemy variety. I would say Resident Evil 7 has better boss fights, but in terms of consistent combat, Resident Evil Village edges it out. Overall, I don't know if I genuinely cannot decide if I like Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Village more, but we live in a world where there's both. No one is forcing me to compare and contrast the two. I mean, outside of the fact that critical comparing and contrasting can be useful, as has been evidenced in this video up to this point. But what I'm saying is I don't have to pick bests here. I'm not a parent. Let's face it, they pick bests. Mine did. I have very few bad words to say about this game on reflection. Aside from the fact that sometimes the combat is a bit annoying, and even then it's only sometimes. I mean, the AI tracking of the things that are following you, like, you know, the stalker of any given area, such as Lady Dimitrescu, you know, sometimes that can be a bit goofy. It's very easy to cheese them around tables. Sometimes they'll stumble around a bit. But overall, the illusion's kept up enough to where you have those moments of, oh shit, oh fuck, oh bugger, as you're running away from the vampire with the big claw hand. And her daughters, of course, who are such delights. I know not everyone's going to appreciate the fact that this has gone in a more action Resident Evil 4 direction. I, as someone who really enjoyed that game, and what a weird Metal Gear Solid-esque game it was in terms of presentation and characterization. I love seeing all that stuff in this. It's got some funny stuff in it, it's got some disturbing stuff in it, horror stuff, it's everything I like in a Resident Evil. Some over-the-top B-movie absurdity interspersed with juicy grossness. Good God, the gore in Resident Evil these days is juicy as fuck. And juicy as fuck is how I guess I'll leave, and I'm not talking about Lady Dimitrescu, I'm just talking about Resident Evil Village, which is juicy as fuck. I remained pretty glued to this game after starting it, which says something because my concentration levels are in the dirt right now. So hey, it grabbed and held my attention. And that genuinely does say a lot these days. So yes, Resident Evil Village. It's Very good. Actually, very good indeed. Yeah.